Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hello, hello, peace and power and elevation be to all you beautiful folks out there today on this beautiful Saturday on August 26th of 2023. Okay, so today I got a special guest, a dear friend of mine. He's been on here before about a year or two ago. All right, we had the conversation about ethnoscience, and we also was talking about evolution and things of that nature, right? And we was discussing his books. So to give y'all an idea of who I'm talking about, before I even bring him on, this gentleman right here, he's the author of these books: The Nine Ether Re-Engineering, The Supreme Mathematic, African Ma'at Magic, and also Pata Technology. Okay. I recommend y'all get his books for real. Like when I tell y'all need to get his books, y'all really need to get his book because he deals with science. But he deals with science from the concept of anthropomorphism. So anthropomorphism deals with understanding symbolism, right? That describes the natural phenomena. So yeah, so he used a lot of anthropomorphism personification in his books, but he still deals with science. I'm telling you, these books are worth getting. I mean, you can get his books on Amazon. I think you can go on his website, but we'll find out when I get him on here. But yes, I gotta bring my friend on. I had to bring him back on here because we're gonna deal with the conversation about the intelligence of our ancestors, which really gets into the topic about science because for some reason people believe that our ancestors didn't know anything about science prior to the transatlantic slave trade, right? Um, and hold on, let me see. Sister Julanda put, we finna talk about African fractals. Oh yeah, we gonna incorporate that too. We gonna talk about that. We gonna talk about all of that. Yeah, but you know, our people still, think that our African ancestors knew anything about scientific knowledge. They didn't know anything about scientific education and all of that, right? Well, we here to dispel those mythology. Okay, we gotta dispel those myths because our people, they were very thorough in science and mathematics and agriculture and all of that prior to the Atlantic slave trade. Okay, so I'm gonna bring my friend on, and he's gonna get it in. Okay, shout out to my buddy right here, Professor ACE.
Hey, peace, sister. How you doing? Thank you for having me back on.
Yes, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, it's always good chopping it up and building with you.
Yes, yes. So we gonna get into the discussion about the intelligence of our African ancestors and their botanical knowledge. Also, the skills they had as far as like science and mathematics is concerned prior to the transatlantic slave trade or whatnot. So I seen your videos where you was getting into the discussion about African knowledge, and you were talking about science, what they knew as far as like the type of skill sets they had way before the transatlantic slave trade. So let's get into like the scientific knowledge about our African ancestors, and how they was able to like how they understood science in the African culture.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and I put some together some slides. I saw
Okay.
the sister, she put a question in about African fractals.
Yeah.
So yeah, I talk about that in this slide deck too. So I think this will probably be perfect if I can just present the slides and you can jump
Okay.
in and stop me and ask questions
Okay.
at any point. Yeah, it's about 40 slides. It should probably take me probably like 45 minutes to go through all of them.
Okay.
But yeah, feel free to just like jump in and ask questions at any point. Um, what can I do to present my screen?
Okay. Let me see.
Do I just click present?
Yes. Yeah. Click present.
Okay, let's see. Okay. Let me upload the file. Uh, Upload the file. All right, it's uploading. Sorry, I probably should have did this earlier. That would have been smart. First time giving this a shot. So yeah.
Okay. Hey, it happens.
but the idea. So yeah, in the presentation, like the description you sent to me, you want to talk about the sciences that we knew prior to the transatlantic slave trade. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this presentation we're going to talk about agricultural science. We're going to talk about textile engineering, uh, and we're going to talk about civil engineering, basically the
Okay.
sciences behind food, clothing, and shelter. We're going to talk about how we made connections between those sciences to spirituality. And then we're going to talk about how we came over here through the transatlantic slave trade with those skills and the spirituality associated with those skills. All right. So, yeah, let me just go on and go through. So, yeah, I'm Professor ACE, African Creation Energy. My website is AfricanCreationEnergy.com. As Sister Tiffany was talking about earlier, the African Creation Energy series of books and videos are essentially a STEAM education initiative which leverages African art in the form of the various African literary art, African visual arts, and African religious and spiritual art for the purpose of motivating, inspiring, and teaching STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math to Africans and the global African diaspora. So the first thing we want to touch on, right? We want to clearly define spirituality because that's a word that has a lot of different definitions and uses. But for the purpose of this presentation, we will derive the definition of spirituality from the following sources. So spirituality involves the recognition of a feeling or sense or belief that there is something greater than self and something more to being human than just sensory experience. Modern uses of spirituality tend to refer to the deepest values and meanings by which people live. Spirituality may involve a quest for ultimate meaning, and spirituality also deals with the quality of being incorporeal or immaterial in nature. So, based on those four definitions, we're saying that spirituality is one, a recognition of the incorporeal or immaterial. That means not matter. Spirituality is recognition that there is something greater than oneself. Spirituality is recognition that there is more to being human than sensory experience. And spirituality is the source from which people derive their meanings and values in life, right? So when we use the term African spirituality in this presentation, we're talking about any system that originated in Africa that facilitates the aforementioned objectives. There is nothing in the above definition that prohibits science from being a source of spirituality. However, there are other definitions and uses of the word spirituality that are outside of the domain of science. For example, references to the supernatural. So, with science as African spirituality, we recognize that science does facilitate a recognition of the immaterial in the form of energy, photons, gluons, and massless particles. We recognize that science facilitates recognition that there is something greater than ourselves. In astrophysics, we recognize the Earth, the Sun, the universe, the galaxy is all greater than ourselves. Science facilitates recognition that there is more than just sensory experience. For example, the visible light spectrum we know is just one small part of the electromagnetic radiation. So there's more more light, more electromagnetic radiation than we can detect with our senses. There's also an audible sound spectrum, right? And the whole purpose of creating scientific tools is because we know that our senses are limited. So scientists facilitates the recognition that there is more than just sensory experience. Science is an ongoing quest for knowledge or ultimate meaning, and science gives us the ability to create what people value in life. So, based on the above points, science could be considered sacred. That is something that should be revered, venerated, and respected. Um, and since science has its origin on the African continent in ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet, then science can be considered a form of African spirituality. And yeah, feel free to jump in and ask questions or stop me at any point. I'm going to go on to the next slide. So, with science as African spirituality, the African spirituality that is science provided us with the basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter that people value in life through the sciences of agricultural science, textile engineering, and civil engineering. So this presentation will show us how the sciences associated with these three basic needs have been closely intertwined with African spirituality from ancient Egypt to West Africa through the Ma'afa of the transatlantic slave trade and to the culture of the African Americans. So the first science that we want to talk about is agricultural science. So, oh, go ahead, Sister Tiffany, if you got a question.
Oh no, you continue. You good.
Okay, sounds good. So the first science we want to talk about is agricultural science. So agriculture is the science or practice of farming, including cultivation of the soil for the growing of crops and the rearing of animals to provide food, wool, and other products. Agriculture encompasses crop and livestock production, aquaculture, fisheries, and forestry for food and non-food products. Agriculture was key in the development in the rise of permanent human settlements and civilizations. Those permanent human settlements also go into the latter point of this presentation, which is architecture and civil engineering. Agriculture began independently in different parts of the globe, but the earliest evidence of agriculture on the African continent occurs in the Nile Valley around 10,000 BC during the pre-dynastic period of ancient Egypt. Plantains, millet, and sorghum were cultivated in Africa by 3000 BC. Yams were cultivated in Africa by 2500 BC, and rice was independently domesticated in West Africa and cultivated by 1000 BC. We have to recognize that there are also other sciences that go into agricultural science. For example, being able to predict the weather, being able to predict the seasons, when to sow your crops, when to harvest your crops, which goes into astronomy. Also, botany and biology are the different sciences that go into agricultural science. In terms of agricultural science and spirituality. So in ancient Egypt, we know that Asar was a netter of agriculture and vegetation, and the crook and the flail are the tools that he holds on his chest. Those are farming tools. The crook was a sickle, and the flail was used for harvesting crops. Another ancient Egyptian netter associated with agricultural science is Nippur and Nipet, which were the Neteru of grain in ancient Egypt. And the consort of Nippur was Neteru, African deity named Tayet, who was the goddess of weaving, which goes into textile engineering, as we'll talk about later. In West Africa, Oko was the Orisha of farming and harvesting. And together with Ogun, they represent the Orishas of agriculture. And then here in the Americas, cousin Zaka is the Loa of the harvest in Haitian voodoo. And he evolved during the Haitian Revolution when free slaves were able to own land. So connecting the agricultural science to the various spiritual systems that we have has been a practice from ancient Egypt to West Africa on into African Americans here in the USA. So this is the video and the point that the Sister Tiffany was referencing, that enslaved Africans arrived in America with skills in STEM. 25% of the enslaved Africans in America were skilled workers. The skills included agriculture, botany, textile engineering, metallurgy, pottery making, weaving, basket making, barrel making, wood carving, carpentry, metalworking, thread making, fabric weaving, soap making, shoe making, leather tanning, brick making, bricklaying, masonry, building, and construction. A lot of these things we kind of take for granted. Like, most people don't realize, like, before you can have fabric to make clothes, you have to have thread. Like, so our African ancestors had the knowledge to take literal fibers to create the thread, to create the cloth, to make the fabric, to make the clothes. Like, you realize how many different steps are in that process. That's a deep skill to have that many of us have lost in this present day. I also have links on here to a slavery skills database, like a database that has the different skills that our enslaved ancestors had, as well as the original video that Sister Tiffany referenced. So agricultural science was so important that it has been the focus of some of our prominent HBCUs here in America, right? North Carolina A&T, the A&T stands for Agricultural and Technical State University. Prairie View A&M, the A&M stands for Agricultural and Mechanical University. Florida A&M, Alabama A&M. So this has been part of one of the essential sciences that we've carried with us and have always held important, because it's the key to life, food. So yeah, this is referencing Sister Tiffany's video, right? The medicinal practices of enslaved people. So knowledge of the curative power of plants was a way for Africans and African Americans to survive and take care for themselves and loved ones. Plant knowledge and ritual practice around health and healing was passed down through generations. So this was another skill, another science, another knowledge that we brought with us in our mind through the transatlantic slave trade. And I have a link there to Sister Tiffany's original video. And if you're not familiar, the practice called hoodoo is where we tied in that agricultural knowledge, that botany knowledge, to our spiritual practices, traditions, and beliefs uh, through slavery in the United States, for the purpose of providing different healing remedies.
Hey, oh, excuse me, brother. So before
Yes.
you continue, now, regarding to the concept about hoodoo, I know this kind of a little off topic, but
No.
um, have you seen where sometimes, like, if you go in people's backyard, they have a tree and they have bottles in it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you kind of like expound on that just a little bit? Like, what's the meaning, significant meaning behind the bottles on the tree?
Yeah, I don't. So I don't know too much about like the details of hoodoo practice. Like, so, I mean, my family is from down south,
Mm-hmm.
in Alabama. So like there are different practices that I know a lot of southern people still have. I don't know what the bottles specifically reference, but I don't know if you've ever heard of like gree-grees. That's like little, sometimes they call them medicine bags. I remember my grandmama and my great grandmama used to have those sitting around, with so it'd be like different herbs in there, and then they would have like little, like, I don't want to call them, so they were Christian, but they had like little pieces of paper written in Arabic, right? So it looked like little Quranic verses in there with the herbs. But that was all part of that hoodoo tradition, that they grew up with. So yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know too much about the bottles in the tree though. If somebody knows something about that, I want
Yeah,
to hear about it.
yeah, because I always been curious. I always wonder because like I'll see it, but I just never understood what the meaning was. So
Yeah,
okay, okay.
I
I just
wanna.
want. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just say I wanna Google that now and see. I'm gonna make a note to myself, try to find out what that it represents.
Okay, okay, then. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of agriculture, so it was also essential when we were escaping slavery, right? So the practice of hiding seeds in the hair was mentioned in the book Black Rice: The African Origins of Rice Cultivation in the Americas by Judith Carney. It says that Maroon history claims that their ancestors introduced the rice crop from Africa, and that Africa originally came that rice originally came from Africa, brought by female slaves who smuggled the seeds of grain in their hair during on the slave ships, right? So this was something that they were wise enough, when they were being kidnapped in Africa, they said, let me grab these seeds and, put them in my braids so that wherever I'm going, I'll be able to grow some food where I'm going. So, that was actually a genius move. And they actually introduced the rice crop here in America. Moving on to the next science. So textile engineering, right? Textile engineering is how we get our clothes. It is the application of material sciences to convert fiber into yarn and yarn into fabric. Cotton remains the most widely used and common natural fiber, making up 90% of all natural fibers used in the textile industry. So we know that our African enslaved ancestors here in America were picking cotton, but we were also producing the textiles made from the cotton. See, they wanna make you think that you was just out in the field picking cotton all day. But after all of those bales of cotton were picked, then the sisters were turning those cotton into yarn and fabric, and so it was a production. It was a production, and it was a science. So the oldest example of a sewing needle is 60,000 years old, found in South Africa. Textile history is almost as old as human civilization. Evidence exists for production of linen cloth in ancient Egypt in the Neolithic period, started around, I can't see that, 5500 BC. In West Africa, so we're familiar with kente cloth. Kente cloth refers to the Ghanaian textile made of hand-woven cloth made from strips of silk and cotton. The word kente comes from the word kenten, which means basket, in the Asante dialect of the Akan language, referencing its basket-like pattern. In Ghana, the Akan ethnic group also refers to kente cloth as woven cloth. Ashanti folklore includes a story where weavers invented kente cloth by seeking to replicate the patterns of Anansi the spider. So this is going to tie into the connection between textile engineering to African spirituality. West African cultures have been weaving textiles for thousands of years. Production of kente cloth dates back to the 17th century, and the Ewe weaving goes back to the 16th century in West Africa. So in ancient Egypt, Neith was the ancient Egyptian deity of weaving in their religion. In the city of Sais, she was viewed as the first and the prime creator who created the universe and all it contains, and that she governs how it functions. Neith's symbol and part of her hieroglyph also bore a resemblance to a loom used to weave fabric. As the goddess of creation and weaving, she is said to reweave the world on her loom daily. An interior of the wall of the temple at Esna records an account of creation in which Neith brings forth the land from the primordial waters, and that and as she conceived in her heart everything that came into being, including 30 deities. Having no husband, she is described as the Virgin Mother Goddess. So, in this regard, Neith is actually a demiurge, right? She's a creator deity who brought forth land from the noon in the ancient Egyptian cosmology, and she used the science of textile engineering to weave together the world. Later on in ancient Egypt, Neith was paired with Ptah Noon, the ancient Egyptian neter of artisans, craftsmen, builders, and blacksmiths. Another ancient Egyptian deity related to textile engineering is Teyet. She was the neter of weaving and textiles in the ancient Egyptian religion, and her husband was Nippur, the ancient Egyptian neter over agriculture. So that's that connection between agriculture and textile engineering. All right. Going over into West Africa. So Olokun is the Orisha who rules the bottom of the ocean and all bodies of water. Olokun was skilled at weaving and dyeing all types of cloth, and Olukun's skills at weaving could only be matched by I don't know how to say this. I think it's Agemo, the chameleon servant of Olorun. Okay, so so we have textile engineering connected to African spirituality in West Africa. And lastly, we have Anansi the spider. I jumped over too fast. Let me go back one. Lastly, we have Anansi the spider. Is that West African spirituality is the god of knowledge, wisdom, and craftiness. It is believed that Anansi brought the craft of weaving to the Akan people. As Anansi Kokuroku, the great spider, is seen as the great designer who weaves a web of energy that permeates throughout all of creation. Anansi, or Aunt Nancy by our enslaved African ancestors in America, was often celebrated as a symbol of slave resistance and survival, because Anansi is able to turn the tables on his powerful oppressors by using his cunning and trickery, a model of behavior used by slaves to gain the upper hand within the confines of the plantation power structure. So this was another deity connected to African spirituality, connected to textile engineering, that we brought with us through the transatlantic slave trade to America. Lastly, textile engineering in its role in our liberation from slavery through what's called the quilt codes, or the Underground Railroad quilt codes. So safe houses along the Underground Railroad were often indicated by hanging a quilt from a clothesline or a windowsill. These quilts were weaved to embed a kind of code, so that reading the different shapes and patterns and motifs sewn into the design, an enslaved person on the run could know the areas of danger or where to go next. So textile engineering was key in our liberation from slavery. Another example of textile engineering. So we talked about weaving, sewing, but braiding actually is a form of textile engineering, using the hair as the fiber. And there's a such thing as the hair braid code. So in the time of slavery in Colombia, hair braiding was used to relay messages. For example, to signal that they wanted to escape, women would braid a hairstyle that had thick, tight braids braided closely to the scalp and was tied into buns on the top. And another style had curved braids tightly braided to their head, and the curved braids would represent the roads that they wanted to use to escape. In the braids, they also kept gold and seeds. Again, they're putting the seeds in the hair for survival. They also kept gold and seeds in which they kept for their long journey when they were trying to escape. And while we're on the topic of escaping from slavery, just wanted to speak briefly about astronavigation. So Harriet Tubman, we all know that Harriet Tubman followed the North Star to guide escaping Africans out of slavery. But what we may not realize or may not appreciate is that being able to navigate by the stars is actually a science in and of itself, right? It's called celestial wayfinding. That was the old word, or astronavigation. This is the practice of using stars to basically navigate at night, right? And so that Big Dipper star, which contains the North Star, that was the star that Harriet Tubman was following to freedom, and they actually created a Negro spiritual based on that premise, and it was called "Follow the Drinking Gourd." So moving on to the last science that we want to discuss, which is civil engineering. Which provides us with shelter, right? Civil engineering is an engineering discipline that applies the physical and scientific principles for design, construction, and maintenance of the physical and naturally built environments, including public works such as roads, bridges, canals, dams, sewage systems, pipelines, and buildings. Civil engineering has been an aspect of life since the beginning of human existence. The earliest practice of civil engineering may have started between 4000 and 2000 BC in ancient Egypt, the Indus Valley, and Mesopotamia, when when humans started to abandon the nomadic existence, creating a need for construction of shelter. Civil engineering and architecture, the terms civil engineer and architect were interchangeable until modern times. In terms of the connection between civil engineering and African spirituality, um, the recorded history of structural engineering starts with the ancient Egyptians. The history of structural engineering dates back to at least 2700 BC, with the step pyramid that was designed and built by Imhotep, the first architecture in history known by name. Because of his abilities in STEM, Imhotep was deified by the ancient Egyptians, along with another ancient Egyptian architect named Amenhotep, son of Hapu. So they deified this architect based on his abilities in civil engineering, again, connecting civil engineering to their spirituality. Also in ancient Egypt, Ptah was the ancient Egyptian creator god and patron of craftsmen, metal workers, and architects. Seshat was the African Egyptian goddess of architecture, building, and surveying. So again, connecting civil engineering to African spirituality. In ancient Egypt, the temples were actually representations of their spiritual system. So ancient Egyptian temples were supposed to be replicas of the universe at the moment of creation. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the universe emerged from a vast cosmic ocean of nothingness. Eventually, the creator god awoke and willed a primordial mound to emerge from out of the cosmic sea. From atop this mound, which the Egyptians called the Zep Tepi, or first event, all things were called into existence. Egyptian temples were designed and built as replicas of the early universe, with the inner sanctuaries representing the primordial mound. As visitors moved through the outer courts, through the hypostyle hall, and into the Holy of Holies, the floor level gradually rose, with the ceilings becoming lower. It also became darker as the open roof courts gave way to a dark interior chambers with just one small light shaft to illuminate the inner chamber. This confined and shadowy atmosphere transported the visitors back to the very beginning of time. Egyptian temples were seen as sacred models of space and time. So they connected the actual construction of their temples, construct the civil engineering, with their spirituality. Over in West Africa, the traditional African mud huts represent cosmological concepts like the primordial mound or the cosmic egg that you hear about in Dogon mythology. Drawings and writings on the mud walls embody philosophy, ideology, and belief systems, and indigenous houses have the connotation of culture and traditional beliefs. Now, that's just the style of the individual house, but then the actual community houses or compounds for families are built in fractal patterns, where the part is representative of the whole, which reflects the traditional cultural beliefs. So on the image on the bottom right, we see the how the entire compound is built into a circular structure, whereas each house has its own circular structure, so that it has that fractal pattern where the part is or the individual house is representative of the entire compound or the whole. So the part is representative of the whole. In West Africa, Odumankoma is the title for the supreme deity in Nyami of the Akan people of Ghana. Odumankoma means the one who gives the universe, and his other epithets include Obuadi, which means creator, Bori Bori, which means architect, and Anasiko Kuroku, which means the great designer. So they attributed the civil engineering or architecture characteristics with the African spirituality in the form of the deity Inyami in Africa. Ogun, Ogo, or Gu is an African deity of technology, building, and metallurgy throughout Africa, and we brought him with us when we came through the Ma'afa, through the transatlantic slave trade here to America.
Hey, brother, can I ask you a question?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so now in your book, real quick, I know you also had the Adinkra symbol, which is the Adobe Satan. I
Yes,
think that's how you say it.
spider web. Yep,
Yeah. Oh, is that the spider web?
I think that's the spider web.
Yeah. This one's supposed to, according to your book, says the Creator acts through the creativity of humans and continue to create. Therefore, common people made it their responsibility to use their creative energies to affect nature and the universe in the best way possible for the past, present, and future.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Yeah. So in the different symbols that I have on that African Creation Energy logo,
Mm-hmm.
um, each one is an Adinkra symbol associated with creativity,
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, and to just be blunt, science, technology, engineering, and math. So yeah, I think the one that you mentioned is representative of the spider web. Is that the one that looks like a star?
No, this one's like an eye symbol or something.
Ah, okay, yeah, the eye at the top. Yeah, yeah. So that one is actually the unification of man and the divine. So
It's the symbol of the union of natural and human creation. The symbol incorporates the eye, the rays of the sun, the double crescent moon, and the stool. The
that's
sun,
right.
the moon, and the eyes depict the natural creation, and the stool depicts human creation.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. You can go. You continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
All
So
right.
the African metallurgical science that we brought to America. So yeah, as we mentioned earlier, enslaved Africans brought an ancient crafts tradition of ironworking with them to the New World and became highly skilled blacksmiths on Louisiana plantations. There was actually a higher price point that you that that they paid for our enslaved ancestors who had certain skills, and they actually referred to these individuals as high value men or a high value man. So I know that's a term that gets thrown around on the internet these days, but it meant something completely different back in those times. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Okay. Can you explain like what it meant at that time period about the high value man before?
Sure. So a high value man was basically an enslaved African with skills, right? An enslaved African with skills basically costs more to purchase than a non-skilled enslaved African. So yeah, they make reference to enslaved Africans with skills as a high value man because he costs more. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
Um, in terms of African metallurgical science and its role in escaping slavery, right? So there was what's called the blacksmith song. So using a secret code, the enslaved blacksmith used the rhythm of their hammer on the anvil to communicate messages to travelers on the Underground Railroad. So we saw how food or agricultural science was key to escaping slavery. We saw how textile engineering was key to escaping slavery in the form of the quilt codes and in terms of like the hair braid codes. And now we see how civil engineering or metallurgical science was important to escaping slavery. In terms of architecture built by our enslaved African ancestors here in America, number one on the list is the White House. The foundations were primarily built by both enslaved and free African American laborers. Slaves were also responsible for quarrying the stone and the brick used to make the structure. As the White House Historical Association puts it, enslaved labor was used in every aspect of White House construction. Another architecture that was built by enslaved Africans here in America, the U.S. Capitol building. Between 1795 and 1801, 385 payments were made to the owners of African American slaves to help build the U.S. Capitol building. The slaves would have done the hard work like sawing logs, moving stone, as well as working at quarries to get raw materials. They were also responsible for more skilled labor like plastering, painting, and carpentry. Another, some more architecture built by enslaved African ancestors here in America. George Washington's Mount Vernon mansion in Virginia. Slaves built George Washington's homes, Mount Vernon. The house had steps and walkways made from sandstone, which was quarried by slaves. After building the houses, the slaves maintained it and worked on the plantation. And it wasn't until after Washington died that he freed some of his slaves in his will. Our enslaved African ancestors also built Thomas Jefferson's Monticello mansion in Virginia, right? They also built James Madison's Montpelier mansion. They went too far again. And our enslaved African ancestors were also responsible for quarrying the sandstone that was used in the building of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. So another connection between spirituality and science, again, are what's called Negro spirituals, right? These are the songs sang by our enslaved African ancestors while they were performing different STEM activities. So I talked about follow the drinking gourd. That's basically making reference to astronavigation, finding the North Star or the Big Dipper. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on, hold on. That deals with agricultural science. When the sun goes down, that's another one dealing with agricultural science. Hoe in a hoe, another agricultural science. Pick a bale of cotton, that's having to do with textile engineering. And let that hammer ring, having to do with metallurgy and construction. So those are the connection, the Negro spirituals, the connection between science and spirituality that our enslaved African ancestors made, right? So yeah, in conclusion, African people have been masters of agricultural science, textile engineering, and civil engineering, the sciences associated with food, clothing, and shelter, respectively, for thousands of years. These sciences have been sacred. That means reverenced, venerated, and respected to African people, and have been intricately connected to our spiritual traditions. Enslaved Africans came to America with these skills in STEM and the spirituality associated with these skills, and it facilitated their ability to escape to freedom and build this country. All right, so that's all I really wanted to present. There's some other notes that, if we want to talk about, we can talk about, but yeah, that's it. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, comments, or we can talk about other things too.
Okay, so I do have some questions. Now, I had to write some of the questions down. Let's talk about Cousin Zaka. So, can't you go into that as far as explain who Cousin Zaka is and why he was so important during that time with the Haitian Revolution, or just with the Haitian people and just African people, period?
Sure. Yeah. So cousin Zaka, he has a few different names. One is called Azaka Mida. He was a Loa or spirit or Orisha that we connected with agriculture. We know how agriculture was, well, the presentation was basically dealing with how agriculture was essential to our survival and well-being. we always made a connection between our science and spirituality. So we made a connection between cousin Zaka or Azaka Meda um, to agriculture. They actually did some research, and they think that what they were actually making reference to when they came up with the name Zaka or Zaka Meda, they were actually making reference to another name um, from West Africa called Zapata, right? And Zapata is the Orisha of he has the same function as Babalu Aye. So he's like the Orisha of medicine, herbs, basically botanical knowledge, right? So that was another one that we basically we brought with us in our mind, brought with us in our memory. We passed it down orally, and then after the Haitian Revolution, when slaves were free, they created Cousin Zaka. So I think that's like the story behind Cousin Zaka. But yeah, you can find out more information about that particular Loa if you just Google Azaka Meda. I think Meda is Medeh. I had the link on the slide, so yeah, people can probably go back and look at the slide and find a link to that article.
All right. Okay. Cool. Cool. Wow. Now I want to ask you something. Have you heard of Antonin Furman?
No, I have not.
Okay. Okay. So Antonin Furman was a anthropologist, a Haitian anthropologist, and also he was a Pan Africanist as well. And he was the one that wrote the book about Robert. He was what was the name of the book that he wrote? It's called Human Equality.
Oh,
I think that was the name of it, Human Equality. Don't quote me on that, but basically he was writing about how humans are pretty much like how we all are Homo sapiens, right?
mm-hmm,
And because he was rebelling against another scientist who happened to be a European, write about wrote about the human inequality of race.
mm-hmm,
And so that scientist was basically trying to say that, you know, that Europeans or Caucasian people were more superior than Africans and black people, right?
mm-hmm,
And so Antonin Furman was basically writing that book saying that, we all humans at the end of the day. We all have, we all have the same qualities. Only
mm-hmm.
difference is we just come from different races and stuff like that. So now, um, I just want to ask you, like, when we hear all these things about how inferior our ancestor was and how they did not have all this knowledge and whatnot, um, and the criticism about black people just not being intelligent, educated, and as a matter of fact, that was like scientific studies they did a long time ago during slavery, trying to, support their claims based on that. I mean, let's just expound on that a little bit. Like how, I mean, now that you did all this presentation and stuff like that, how can that can be used to combat against the mythology, or do you think our people today rather have that mentality about our African people as far as their intelligence lack of intelligence is concerned, based on the Europeans conclusion ideology, or what do you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just sitting here thinking about it. It's funny. Um, so like, I'm trying to find some words. So it's weird, right? So if somebody like if I really truly believe that I was superior or better than another person, right? Would I oppress that person and try to hold them back, or would I try to help them out, right? And so it's like it's the action that lets you know that they don't even really believe the thing, or they didn't believe the things that they were saying, right? Because if they truly felt superior, then there would be no need to hold back and oppress a person. If they truly felt superior, they wouldn't have needed our ancestors, right? They would have built the country on their own. Like the one of the key points to knowing that our African ancestors had those different skills in STEM before the transatlantic slave trade, and that the slave traders came seeking our African ancestors because of their skills. That shows that they needed help. That shows that they needed help, right? So yeah, it's it was a mythology, and fortunately, in present times, most people don't. Well, that's not. I'll say most people don't really believe that anymore. There still are a few people who may be holding on to those ignorant ideas. But yeah, we're making progress, and I feel like we're not really resistant when we find out new things about our ancestors. Different skills they had, different talents they had. In the age of social media, man, people spread that around. They let people know. It becomes a big deal. I remember what was that movie, Hidden Figures, when we found out that black women, basically they used black women to do the calculations to go to the moon. You know what I mean? Like, people were blown away by that. Nobody, it was hidden, it wasn't known, but once it was known, everybody celebrated it. And I feel like that's the day and time we live in now, when we uncover those different skills and those different talents, all that different knowledge that our African ancestors had, we celebrate it, and that's a beautiful thing.
All right. So brother, I was showing this book right here. The name of the book is called The Equality of the Human Races. I just
Okay.
couldn't get it out. So the author name was Antonin Furman. And
Okay.
he was a black anthropologist. But yeah, that's the book that he written to basically because he was deal with anthropology. So basically he wrote that book.
Do you remember like what the date, like when did he write that?
So this book had to be out around the 19, I want to say probably around like the 1920s, somewhere like that, because yeah, was it around 1920s? Hold on, let me look up the date. Let me before I
Yeah,
give you
I
the wrong answer.
yeah, I just googled it. It said first published in 1885, so that was like
Okay, yeah, yeah,
20
yeah,
years.
around 1885. Yeah, 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 around 1885. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that was a revolutionary thought for that day and age, right? That's only 20 years outside of slavery. Yeah, I can imagine he got a lot of pushback.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely. So also I want to ask you this. Now, you mentioned about the textile in your presentation.
Hmm.
Okay. So let's talk about the textile in the north, right? If you can expound on that about the textile industry in the north and how the slaves was like dealing with that,
Yeah. So I mean, up north, yeah, that's interesting because up north,
especially in New York.
yeah, that we weren't. It wasn't supposed to be slavery in the North, right? But our ancestors, we escaped slavery in the South, and then we went north, and then we were working in the different textile plants up north too. So, yeah, I mean, look, and even I don't know we were building backstage, but I was thinking, even with the auto manufacturing industry that was taking place in the Motor City of Detroit, that a lot of people, a lot of our African ancestors moved from down south where they were different sharecroppers. They went up there to do those different manufacturing jobs in the auto plant. So yeah, I mean, we have a long tradition of participating in this in STEM fields. So yeah, that's part of our heritage. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily embrace it as much these days. We don't want to do that hard labor, but I think in present times, a lot of the STEM fields is more like on the computer. So in terms of programming and different software engineering jobs like that.
Okay. Now you also had mentioned about Aunt Nancy. Now,
Nancy, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so that was the slaves, our enslaved African ancestors' name for Anansi the spider. So that's just evidence that you know, we came through the transatlantic slave trade, and we still kept those stories and those ideas in our mind. And I know you know, like the game of telephone, where you'll say one thing to one person, and as it moves down the line, it changes a little bit. So
Mhm.
the fact that you know our enslaved African ancestors here in America referred to Aunt Nancy as the weaver. It's not a far connection to connect. Okay, Aunt Nancy as the weaver and Anansi as the weaving spider. That's part of the same tradition that they just passed down through oral storytelling.
All right, and then let's go into the blacksmith songs. Now, what is so significant about the blacksmith songs, and what is one of the songs that is very common that people may know or may have heard about, but they didn't know that was part of the blacksmith songs?
Sure. So it's it's not actually a song. So what it is, so like Morse code, how you can like do like a dot or a dash or a tap, or certain tapping or repeating patterns can communicate a message. So the blacksmith song, basically, imagine you have a hammer and you have an anvil, and the blacksmith is working in his forge. And then when he wants to communicate to maybe there's some people who want to run away from slavery, or maybe there's some people who have already run away who he's trying to warn to not come here. It was a certain rhythm that he would pound out using his hammer and his anvil to communicate with those people to say, hey, now's the time to run away, or you might want to stay away from this place, because the slave catchers are out here trying to find people who escape. So that's basically what the blacksmith song is. It was basically that sound that the blacksmith would pound out on his anvil with the hammer.
All right, and then you also mentioned about Smithsonian, right? The museum in
Yes,
Washington D.C.,
that's right.
and you mentioned about the Africans. So why is it important for people to know about the Africans and their vital role in Smithsonian?
Right. So the Smithsonian Institute in Washington D.C., um, the blocks, the stones that were actually used to build that building, our enslaved African ancestors were the ones who quarried those actual stones to build the building. So while we didn't physically build the building, we quarried the stones that were used to build the building. So when you see um, that red Smithsonian building in Washington D.C., just know that, yeah, it was our African ancestors' skills that helped build that building.
Okay, okay. Now I want to get back to one the going to African spirituality. Now
Hmm.
let's go back to the Ifa tradition, Yoruba. I remember I read somewhere in your book that you talk about Ogun
Hmm.
represents some form of technology. I mean, but he, also he represents thunder, but he represents something in technology. Can't you expound on Ogun?
Okay, yeah. So Ogun specifically in West Africa is the Orisha of iron. Well, I say Orisha, right? In the Yoruba tradition, he's the Orisha, but Ogun is actually revered throughout West Africa. He comes up with different names in different West African spiritual traditions. He's called Gu by the God people in Ghana. He's called Ogo, going up to Mali, all the way out to Senegambia. So yeah, Ogun, Ogo, or Gu, those are the different names used by that blacksmith deity in West Africa. Basically, a blacksmith is responsible for working with metal, creating any metal tools, any metal objects from the raw natural resources. He's also part of he's one of the in the Yoruba tradition. He's one of the Orishas associated with agriculture, because he's responsible for creating the tools needed to harvest the different agricultural crops. So yeah, Ogun, and Ogun was another one that we brought with us in our mind through the transatlantic slave trade here in America. So he shows up in Haitian voodoo also as Ogum with an M. Again, that ancestral memory, just trying to pass that tradition on orally. So yeah, we recognize Ogun. as basically a deity associated with building, metalworking, and technology in general, right? Basically connecting our spirituality and our science. And let me say this, right? So there are two different ways people can conceive of a deity or God, right? One way is to say, okay, well, this God controls such and so, and because this God controls this thing, then I have to pray to this God in order to make something happen. So say, for example, if you said that let's use Ogun because that's what we're talking about. If we say, okay, Ogun is the Orisha over iron, so in order for me um, to get something metal that I need, like let me think, any kind of tool, let me pray to Ogun, and then this tool is going to fall to the sky. That's not how we conceived it, right? The other way people can conceive of a god is we can respect something, we can respect the tradition so much, we recognize that it's so important that we honor it and revere it, right? So what we were doing with Ogun was basically saying we recognize how important that this science, this skill of metallurgy is to our survival and well-being, that we're going to honor, we're going to revere it, and we're going to deify it, and we're going to call it Ogun, right? That doesn't mean that that we have to pray to Ogun to obtain our metal. It's that we're honoring the fact that metallurgy is essential to our survival and well-being.
And I'm glad that you brought that up because, people tends to argue that you cannot incorporate spirituality with science. You see what I'm saying? And in some cases, that might be factual that you can't incorporate spirituality with science. There's some cases that you may have to separate it. But the way you broke it down beautifully, it pretty much basically you're saying that you use the spiritual components, right, to bring about the symbolism of the natural phenomena or the object or material around you. So that way, it's your way of being able to like have an interpretation and have the understanding.
Yeah.
I, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I'm just gonna build on what you're saying. So like, my thing is like, okay, let's just play the tape forward, right?
Right.
Let's assume, for all intents and purposes, that you cannot combine spirituality and science, or you cannot combine religion and science. So everybody in the world, we're gonna throw away spirituality, we're gonna throw away um, religion, right? And the only thing that is left is science. Eventually people are going to start revering and respecting science like it was spirituality. Like they're going to do it. You know what I'm saying? So so my thing is like, I mean, it's been a tradition, that traditionally science and spirituality were connected. It's only until really recently, like in the 19th century, where people even started having the conversation to separate science and religion.
And I
And
see that you got it right here with under natural philosophy.
yeah, I mean, I didn't really build on this slide, but I can talk about this slide.
Yeah,
So,
you
um,
sure.
first of all, let's talk about this whole idea that science and religion are in conflict and incompatible, right? So that is called the conflict thesis, and I put the link there. I encourage people to Google that, read that article, and learn more about the conflict thesis. So this idea that religion and science are in conflict and incompatible has long been discredited and has lost favor among the consensus of contemporary scientists and historians of science. Contemporary scientists and historians of science widely accept a complexity thesis, which thoroughly describes the entangled relationship that science has had with religious beliefs. That basically touches on what the sister Tiffany was just saying, meaning that there are cases where you can absolutely combine science and religion, but then there are other cases where, yeah, there is some conflict and you shouldn't do it, right? But that's not a conflict. That's saying it's complex. There's sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't do it. And that's what most contemporary scientists and historians of science say. They are for this complexity thesis, right? Even if when you go to the natural philosophers, right, where they say that they were making attempts to explain natural phenomena without making reference to Greek gods. It's true. They were trying to explain natural phenomenon without making reference to Greek gods. But then when you read what they were saying, even in their explanation, when they talk about the fundamental things like air, fire, water, they ended up deifying those things, right? They ended up honoring and revering those things. So while they weren't making reference to Greek gods, they still were making a connection between their science and their spirituality, right? As I said before, like the whole discussion about separating science and religion and spirituality didn't really occur until the 19th century, around 1834. And and even in modern times, the separation still hasn't occurred because, as me and Sister Tiffany talked about the last time I was here, you have the names of different deities and gods as scientific terminology. So how has science and religion been separated, right? And then I have the quote from Albert Einstein on the right. He says that science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind.
All right, and can you explain what that quote means so people have a better understanding?
Sure. So there's a longer article where Albert Einstein is basically talking about science and religion. So yeah, when he says science without religion is lame, he's not talking about lame like how we how we usually talk about it. Like, man, that was like a lame joke or something. He's saying, basically religion or spiritual lame in the sense of it can't walk, or it's crippled, or it doesn't have motivation, right? So basically, he's saying that religion and spirituality serves as a motivation for science, and science is what provides vision for religion. Religion without science is blind, meaning while religion and spirituality might motivate science, um, religion and spirituality need science in order to gain knowledge. So yeah, that's basically like in a nutshell what he was getting at with that quote.
Yeah. Wow. Now, it's so funny because I know you mentioned about the Greek gods and whatnot. What people tend to not understand, right? When they try to make that argument, as opposed where you can't have spirituality and science, you have to have one or the other. Well, how do you explain the planets that was named after the Romans and Greek gods, right? There were seven planets: Pluto, Jupiter, Neptune, Mercury, Saturn, Uranus, Venus, Mars. How do you explain those planets that was named after the Greek gods or the Roman gods, Roman deities? How do you explain the days of the week that was named after the Roman deities or Greek gods? How do you explain the months that's named after the Romans and the Greek gods? I mean, that would be like the first question that comes to mind. So if that's the argument, that's the case, then wouldn't it be logical to change the names of all these different components? Wouldn't it be logical to change the name and call it something else? I mean, so my thing is, it's not fair that where these different things can be named after the Romans and the Greek deities, right, in their mythology, but we as African people or African descendant people cannot come up with our own interpretation or use our own personification to, you know, label different things so that way we can be able to have our own interpretation, our own connection. Because at the end of the day, um, I mean, well, what I'm saying is we can't. I mean, it's not fair that we can't come up with our own nomenclature. Because at the end of the day, it's still saying the same thing. It's just that we have our own nomenclature and how it's used in the Western practice. They have the nomenclature for it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they conveniently, people who say, okay, science and religion should be separated, conveniently ignore the fact that all those different deities that you name are used as scientific terminology. Like they don't even address it. They just leave it alone. Like you said, if it was a real separation, then there would have been a sit down and was like, okay, everywhere where we're making reference to a deity or a god in science, we need to change the name because we're trying to separate science and, but they haven't done that. Even elements on the periodic table. There's an element on the periodic table named after Thor, right? It's called thorium.
Mm,
Parts of the body. A lot of people don't know. Hymen. Hymen is actually the name of a Greek god, right? So it's
really?
like, oh yeah. I have a video called "Modern Science Terminology from Ancient Mythology." I talk about all the like 15 different modern scientific terms that basically came from Greek philosophy, mythology, and Greek religion. So, yeah, it's yeah, science and religion have not been separated yet, right? So,
Right.
yeah,
And
it's just
then
a
when we
point of fact. Yeah,
right, and then when we look at like certain symbols, like medical symbols, like the caduceus symbol,
yeah,
or like the ambulance symbol, you know what I'm saying? Like each of these symbols, I mean, it has to come from somewhere. Like, well, what these symbols represent? Why is this symbol being used in this medical field or in the fire department? Like, why do they have those symbols? What those symbols come from, and what was the means behind those symbols? You see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Yeah. What else I was gonna ask you? Oh, it came to my mind. I wanted to ask you about. I gotta get my thoughts together. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it'd be so much stuff that be coming through the mind, like, and sometimes you just forget what you want to talk about. I'm the same way. I be
Yeah,
like
because
thinking
I just had it in my mind, but I don't know it. I forgot what I was gonna ask. I
it'll
know it's
it'll
gonna, yeah,
it'll come
it's
back
gonna
to
come
you.
to me. It's gonna come back to
Yeah.
me. It got something to do with oh, okay, I know what I was gonna ask you. Now let's talk about the vaccination. A lot of
Mm,
people tend to like don't have understanding about the vaccination and its origin. But what they don't know is one, the Africans, right?
mm,
The enslaved Africans, he was one of the first to use what we call vaccination, but at that time was inculation.
mm.
Oh,
Inoculation. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Inoculation.
Okay, my
Inoculate.
bad.
Yeah.
Inoculation. Thank you
Yeah.
for correcting me. So, yeah, he was one of the first to use the inoculation, for smallpox.
Hmm.
So, can't you like pretty much expound a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean that was another science that again we brought here to America. That was something. I mean, you asked about cousin Zaka earlier, right? So cousin
Mm-hmm.
Zaka, is basically connected to Zapata from West Africa, who is connected to Babalu Aye, who is the Orisha associated with smallpox and inoculation, right? So that just shows how far back that science, that knowledge was with our people, right? That even, you know, pre transatlantic slave trade, we had knowledge about the science of inoculation, and we deified that in Baba Luaye or Zapata or Cousin Zaka here in America. When you see the artwork, the depiction of Baba Luaye, they always show him with like those big smallpox sores on his arm, right? So that just shows you that we had knowledge of that science, all the way back then.
So now, oh, so I want to give this response to the comments. Oh, so the sister put there are social, those are social construct, not scientific application though. All right, so now this is where I have to put a little bit of challenge there. Um, so where you think the scientific application get its inspiration from? Because let's think about it. Those who were into spirituality, right? They was one of the first, and animism at that. They was one of the first to deal with the concept of healing and dealing with medication and things of that nature before there was hospitals and there was ambulance and all of that. So I mean, we got to think about how did scientific application come into existence. Like, where did the idea come from? Where did the inspiration come from? Like, I mean, that's just something to think about. That's all I'm just asking. But go ahead, brother.
Yeah, no, I wish I could, because you can there's so many different ways to read in to what somebody is saying. So I wasn't 100% sure of what she was getting at. She said those are not
So she was getting at when we was talking about the names. like that. I mean, the different things that name after deities, like the Greek and Roman gods. We was talking about that earlier and stuff like that, and so and she was putting that comment down while we was having that conversation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
So
okay, so a scientific application named after a Greek god. So there's such a thing as a hermetic seal, right? A hermetic seal is a description of something that occurs in chemistry, where basically you're sealing the glass airtight. Hermes again is the name of a Greek deity, and uh, yeah, he was also associated with medicine. So that's a scientific I think, but I guess her argument is that the name is just a social construct, but the scientific applications are named after a social construct, which is named after a Greek deity. And if science and religion are supposed to be separate, then they should make an effort to remove the name of deities from science. That's my opinion. Maybe there's a perspective that people may have that says that science and religion can coexist with the name of deities in science. Oh, the days of the week. Okay, perfect, perfect.
so um so so yeah, before we close it out, now can you tell people what your degree is?
Sure. Yeah. So my bachelor's degree is in electrical engineering. I have a minor in physics. I went Georgia Southern University. I'm a Georgia boy. My master's degree is in mathematics. I went over to Georgia State University. I've worked for the past 20 years as a computer programmer and data scientist professionally. And then, yeah, wrote those books basically with the intention of motivating Black and African people in science, technology, engineering, and math, because I had a feeling that would help change things for the better. So, yeah, it was a noble idea. Started in 2009. Yeah, my website is AfricanCreationEnergy.com. Probably have one more book that I want to put out, and that'll probably complete the series.
Okay. You know the title of the book that you're gonna put out, or you haven't came up with the name yet?
Yeah, I know the title. I'm kind of holding that tight to the chest
Okay.
until I have it ready to
Okay.
go. But yeah, it's basically going to be a compilation of the previous books and videos with some new information. Basically, just have everything all in one, and in one single package, and make any revisions and edits. Yeah, for posterity.
Okay. So, question: what is electrical engineer for those who may not know?
Ooh, what is electrical engineering? So yeah, electrical engineering. So it's basically, so engineering in general is applied science, right? So you have like the theory of electrons and atoms, et cetera, that you learn in physics, right? And so electrical engineering is basically making practical application of those scientific theories to design electrical circuits, electrical components, um, yeah, electrical circuits and electrical components. So, in a nutshell, that's what electrical engineering is. As a child, I was the type of kid that I used to like take apart the radio, take apart the TV, try to see how it works, and then put it back together. So like I was always fascinated, with electronic gadgets. My grandfather gave me. They used to sell these little like electric circuit kits that you could buy from Radio Shack. I know I'm dating myself because Radio Shack I don't even think is in
No,
business
Radio
anymore.
Shack ain't around anymore. Yeah, they
Yeah.
been closed Radio Shack. I was upset when they did that, but yeah.
Yeah. They used to sell like these little kits where you could like make like 100 different circuits from these kits. So yeah, that my grandfather got me one of those when I was like 9 years old, and I was fascinated with electric circuits ever since. And yeah, when I went to college, I actually started off as a sports medicine major, but I was more fascinated by electrical engineering, so I ended up changing my degree, or changing my major. So yeah.
All right, and then you said you also have a degree in physics. So what type of physics degree do you have, or is just physics in general?
Yeah, so it was a minor in physics. So what they do, when you're an undergrad, you basically you take a certain number of courses, that's less than what you would major in. So like my major degree was electrical engineering. I already had to take physics. I already had to take modern physics. I already had to take certain physics courses for the electrical engineering degree. And so when I did the minor in physics, it was just some additional courses that I had to take to be able to get the minor. So yeah, I just took those additional physics courses. A lot of them are general physics courses. So you do basically classical physics, then you do modern physics, which talks about like from the 1900s forward. Then you do thermal and statistical physics, which basically deals with like thermodynamics. um, and yeah, so it's basically generalized physics. For a little brief period I considered doing a master's degree in physics, because it is still fascinating. And there you get more specialized, where you start getting into like particle physics, or if you want to do astrophysics, etc. But yeah, it was just basically generalized physics, general physics, as my minor.
All right, and you said mathematics. You have a
Yeah,
master in mathematics,
yeah, master's degree in math and statistics. Yeah, yeah,
math statistics.
yeah, that's right, that's right.
Okay, okay, okay. So like, what type of like are you dealing with like database, or what are you dealing with when you're dealing with math statistics?
Yeah, so with math and statistics, so basically, um, math and statistics, right? So
Hmm.
basically, statistics is the study of probability, possibility, learning the different distribution functions, learning how to write the programs or the codes to generate certain types of analysis. So yeah, that's the statistical part. The math part, is basically learning how to do mathematical proofs, learning how to write a mathematical proof, learning mathematical logic. For example, like um, before I ever took a course on mathematical proofs, like I used I used equations all through undergrad, but and even in the book, sometimes they'll show you like how a certain equation is derived, but it's another step, another level to know how to prove it, right? And so that was actually a rigorous study, knowing how to do a mathematical proof. I saw a story not too long ago about these young girls who came up with a new unique proof. I think for the Pythagorean theorem. There were two high school age black
Oh yeah,
girls.
the young ladies from New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, unless you've ever had to do a mathematical proof, most people may not appreciate how powerful that is. That they came up with a new way to prove the Pythagorean theorem. That's actually very powerful. So yeah, hats off to them.
Wow, yeah, it is. So a sister has a question for you. She said, ask him if he's familiar. What does he think about Dr. Mayor Matire?
Yeah, I haven't heard of her before.
Okay.
Moya Moya McTeer. Let me.
Mateer, I'm sorry. Yeah, Moya Mateer. Yeah. So she said that Dr. Mateer is an astrophysics.
Oh, that's powerful.
Okay. So he said he never heard of him. So who is your favorite physics?
My favorite physicist. Whoo. Ah. I don't want to be cliche. I'm trying to, because the first person that came to my mind, but I don't want to say. I'm trying to think of somebody else.
Well,
Um,
say who was the first person that came to mind. That's okay.
the first person who came to my mind was Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? But
Oh yeah, a lot of
I
people like him. I like him.
yeah, I feel like that's low hanging fruit though. I was trying to think of somebody else.
Okay.
Um, Henry Gates is another good one. I don't really know how people. I think his name is Henry Gates. How people
Oh,
can.
you talking about it's not Henry Gates. What's his name? William Gates. Bill William Gates. I
Yeah,
know who you talking about. I know the brother that you're talking about.
I'm blanking on it.
I think it's
Sylvester Gates.
Sylvester
That's
Gates.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sylvester
there,
Gates. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
there it is. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, yeah, but I do tune in to Neil Tyson every once in a while. Just listen to his podcast because he has a podcast called Star Radio. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, Star Talk. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
a
Star Talk
subscriber.
Radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I tune in, and then also I normally tune into like World Science Festival,
Hmm.
and there's another one called Closer to Truth.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the YouTube channel, but yeah, basically they deal with people who are astrophysicists, um, people who are into cosmology, um, people who are astronomers. You talking about biologists?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's so many. They get into like a deep subject matter, like they get into like asking deep questions about the universe and all of that. So yeah, so I watched that channel. I wonder, have you heard of Stefan Alexander?
No, that's another one. Y'all giving me a whole lot of people I need to
Okay, yeah,
research.
Stefan Alexander wrote a book called The Jazz Physics, and what made him write that, he's a brother, by the way, and I
Hmm.
think he's originally from Trinidad, but he grew up in America.
Hmm.
But yeah, he wrote a book called The Jazz Physics, which was an inspiration off of John Coltrane,
Hmm.
and yeah, interesting. John Coltrane, right? He was a jazz musician. I know you know about John Coltrane. He was a
Yeah.
jazz musician, but
Yeah.
he was also at one point in time he practiced Islam, but he was like studying physics, so he used like different codes, you know,
Hmm.
to like read music and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So he came up with his own code. As a matter of fact, I think I can pull it up
Hmm.
while we on here talking real fast. But if you want to say anything else while I pull up the information, you go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing with mathematics. Like you can use any kind of symbols to encode and create meaning behind anything, right? So, I mean, mathematics is the use of written symbols to encode certain meanings. But yeah, you could also do that with music. So yeah, I'm not surprised, that he was able to make a connection between jazz music um, to different concepts in physics. Yeah, that's actually pretty powerful. And I'm gonna look for his the jazz of physics. I'm gonna look for his book now.
Yeah, The Jazz of Physics, yep, by Stefan Alexander. All right, and he wrote a book called Fear of the Black Universe. I think
Mm.
that's the book he wrote. But
Hmm.
here's the symbol that John Coltrane created. Here's the symbol right here. That's his picture. I hope you can see it. Yeah, that's his picture, and that's the symbol.
Mm. That
Yeah.
looks like what are those things? Sometimes people put like sand on like a vibrating surface, and then it forms different shapes. Is I can't remember what it's called. Is it called cymatics or something like that? That looks like one of those cymatic symbols.
Okay. Yeah. Let me look it up. Let me look up John Coltrane symbol. Um. Let's see. Hold on. Let me look it up. All right. Okay. So here it is. Here it is. I'm gonna pull it up real fast for you. Yeah, let me pull it up right here. So here it is, right here. If you can see the article.
Yes.
So yeah, it's called, it's this symbol right here that he created.
Hmm.
hmm All right, it's known as the Coltrane circle or the Coltrane circle of tones. The
Hmm.
diagram is, or the diagram is based on the circle of fifths, which in musical theory is a geometric representation of the relationship between 12 semitones of the chromatic scales, their notions, flat or sharp, and their relative shade. Right.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's what he was using. So that's how basically he was able to keep up with, the sound, as far as like making sure he stay on note, and
Hmm.
making sure know when he can go high, when he can go low, when he can go flat. or when he can go sharp, etc. You know, so that's why he has such a smooth sound. Like when you listen to his jazz music,
Hmm.
like you can just hear the sound, and it just so it comes out very smooth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like very unique. So yeah, yeah. I just wanted to share that. Also, I have a question. About your last presentation. Right, you
Hmm.
said you had another slide on here. Would you like to share that slide before you
Oh no,
go?
I think this what we have here. This is the last slide. I had
Okay.
some other stuff. This was just basically additional
Oh, okay.
architecture that our African ancestors built here in America. Yeah, just a list. Um, yeah, in addition to the state capitol, the statue that's on top of the capitol, that was also built by Philip Reed, who was an enslaved African here in America. So yeah, it was just some additional information for anybody who may be curious.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Oh, also, there's another physicist. His name is Melton. No, excuse me. What's his name? His name is Melvin Felton Jr. He wrote a book called The Universe Within.
Hmm.
I can show you that. It's called Universe Within.
You one thing I want to give you your flowers and give you your props. You are extremely well read. Like you have knowledge about so many different subject matters, so many different books. Every
Oh,
time I talk to you, you always teach me something. So yeah, I just wanted to give you
oh.
your flowers and give you your props.
Thank you. Yes. And I want to give you your flowers because you do an extraordinary job of breaking down science and try to bring it into its more simple, put into simple understanding or put into like context where it could be more relatable to your audience.
Mm,
So I got to give you credit for it because I know it takes a lot to actually explain scientific knowledge. You know what I'm saying, especially when it comes down to the complexity of it.
yeah.
So, and I think you do a thorough job at it. I mean, you do a thorough job. You do a phenomenal job. I, I ain't never seen nothing like that. You know what I'm saying?
Uh,
I never seen anybody like that can do that. I mean, except for one person I know, but you do a thorough job. I'm like, wow. I'm like, this is extraordinary. Like this man does a great job. But yeah, this is the book right here. It's called The Surprising Way the Human Brain Models the Universe Within by Melvin A. Felton Jr.
mm, I'm gonna check that one out too. You gave me reading lists for all winter.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's very important that we try to support our people that what I'm saying, that's in these fields, and it's like it's so many of our people that in the STEM field, but they are underrepresented.
Yeah.
They are underrepresented because when we look at the STEM, right, we think of majority white people and Asian people, right?
Hmm.
I mean, which they do make up the majority, but it's everybody else is there too. So how can't you ignore the other groups? You know what I'm saying? So we
Yeah.
have this concept that we think that a lot of our folks don't deal with science, and they really do. I mean, it's a long list of scientists out there that I can put out there that I can even name, and I just named two of them, right? Well, we named four of them, but one of them is very popular. But yeah, the other three, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, you know what's crazy about that is like so like we have HBCUs all over this country, right?
Mhm.
Each HBCU, they have science programs, they have engineering program. Well, I shouldn't say each one, but different ones have science programs, they have engineering programs, they have math programs, right? They're turning out another class every year of people who major in science, engineering, math, every year. So there's probably so many black people in STEM. It's probably more than we can count or even think about. If you just consider that one fact by itself. Like I remember being in college. So there's this it's an organization called National Society of Black Engineers.
Mm-hmm.
That's just engineering. That's not dealing with math. That's not dealing with tech. That's not dealing with IT. That's not dealing with just engineering. And it's a huge convention, like literally thousands of people, thousands of black people, just engineers, right? So yeah, that we are, while proportionally speaking, we may be underrepresented in STEM. There are still a lot of us in STEM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Most definitely is. Yeah, it is. We just gotta get that light to shine.
yeah.
Also, I forgot. There's a sister, right? She's a bioanthropologist, when she
Mm,
deals with biology and anthropology. She talks a lot about genetics and all that. Like, she especially goes into like the transatlantic slave trade and talk about how, the African American genes, and also why we have the different component genes and stuff like that.
mm.
The sister name is Sister Fatima Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah, Sister Fatima Jackson. She does a great job. She does presentation on bioanthropology, but she really focused more so on the transatlantic slave trade and African Americans genetics and whatnot.
Mm,
So, yeah, that's another person I would put down on the list.
mm.
But nonetheless, I really appreciate you here. And ladies and gentlemen, please make sure y'all check out my dear friend and his books. I mean, check out the Patah Technology. If you get a chance to, you guys read this book. Um, Also, check out Supreme Mathematics, African Magic. Okay, this is another one of his books. Um, and this one is Ninth Ether Re-Engineering by African Creation Energy. All right, this is another one. So, out of all the books that you have written, let me ask you this: which one is like your personal favorite?
I hope she don't say which one is my favorite.
Yeah.
Um, each one is each one is special. It's like try to
Oh,
pick a
okay. Let me
kid.
ask: which one is the most the one that brings more aspiration to you? That the one that inspired you to, like, you had to write it, like you had to just put it out there, like
Mm.
it just so you wanted to be so aspirational.
Yeah. It's I would say each one. So I'll give you some background, right? So initially, right, it
Mm-hmm.
started off, the idea was to write one book about
Mm-hmm.
African science, engineering, and technology. This was just going to be
Mm-hmm.
one book. Um, and but as you start outlining and fleshing out your ideas, you realize that it's more of a diverse array of topics, and so it maybe one book wouldn't suffice. So I was like, okay, I'll start off with three. So the in terms of the first book that I ever wrote, it was the Supreme Mathematic African Magic, right? And that was because I'm coming out of grad school. I have this degree in math, and I recognize that our people are struggling in math, right? More so than any other subject. So I was like, okay, let me focus in on that first, right? Because I actually have the background, I have the knowledge, and I see the need. So okay, I'm going to write the math book first. Then the second book I wrote was for Thai technology. Again, that one is dealing with different topics related to electrical engineering, right? And again, that's from because of my undergrad background, right? And then the third book that I wrote in order, but I wanted it to be the first of the series, was the Science of Sciences and the Science in Sciences. That's just basically dealing with the philosophy of science, dealing with the philosophy, the ideas, the different beliefs that underpin, this enterprise that we call science. So it started off with those three, and then when I wrote those three, then I started getting challenges from people. Well, if you really know science, then why can't you build a pyramid? This was 2010, so this was 10 years ago, right? So I was like,
Oh,
okay, now
actually 13
yeah,
years ago.
13 years ago, 13
Yeah.
years ago. Look, COVID make you lose time, right?
Oh
so
yeah.
so this was 2010. So why can't you build a pyramid? All right, so I'm like, okay, let me. So I built a little small pyramid in my front yard and wrote a book about it, and that was the Architect book, How to Build a Pyramid, basically dealing with architecture, civil engineering, and structural engineering. Um, then I started getting inspiration for the 9E3 engineering book, basically dealing with thermodynamics, right? And that was really a follow up to the Ta technology book because it was more connections that could be made between certain scientific principles to the African art forms that we find in ancient Egypt and in West Africa. So then I did the 9E3 engineering book. At that point, I had been working as a computer programmer for a while. So I was like, okay, I now want to write a book about the relationship between computer programming to African philosophy. So then I wrote the Kanun Patar to computer book. So it's yeah, it's like almost as if like different books came up at different points in my life where I saw a need and was just trying to fill the need. So yeah, right now I'm at 8. And yeah, the last book will be number 9, and I think I want to wrap up the series with that.
Okay. Wow. I got to get some more of your books then. Also, I would recommend personally to everybody else to check out Dr. Robin Walker. Dr. Robin Walker is a author and a historian that's from England. He's a brother from England. But he has written like 3 volumes called Blacks in Science. This one is Ancient Egyptian Contribution to Science and Technology and the Mysterious Sciences of the Great Pyramid. So this is his book. The second book he read was, hold on, the second one is Blacks in Science, West and East African Contributions to Science and Technology and Intellectual Life and Legacy of Timbuktu. Right. So you guys check this one out. And here's the third one, which is the African American Contribution to Science and Technology.
Mm,
Right.
powerful.
So you heard of Dr. Robin Walker?
I haven't heard of him either, but yeah, I'm going to definitely pick up those books.
Okay. Cool. All right. So, if there's anything else you would like to say,
I just want to say thanks for having me on again. Yeah, always happy to share and learn from you also.
oh, thank you. You know what? Like I said, you do a great job, and I think that uh, you are a great inspiration or whatnot. Oh, but let me ask you one more question, because some may be curious. Because there's some people that have read your book and they don't understand why you formatted your book the way you did. Can't you explain the reason why you formatted your book the way that you did, as far as like how you wrote it and like the pictures that you use? Can you explain the reasons behind it?
Sure. So no problem. So as I began the presentation, tried to give a brief explanation of the African Creation Energy series of books and videos. So I describe it as a STEAM education initiative. STEAM means science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Specifically, the African Creation Energy books leverages African art in the form of African literary art that includes mythology, folklore, parables, African visual arts, and African religious and spiritual art for the purpose of motivating and inspiring and teaching science, technology, engineering, and math to Africans in the global African diaspora. So I think if people have an issue with the use of art to teach STEM, they have an issue with STEAM, and that is a larger argument that they should have, not just with me, but with anybody teaching STEAM, honestly. But yeah, that's the reason why.
Right, because don't nobody criticize when what's his name? It's a like it's a scientist's name, but I maybe I'm gonna mispronounce his name, so you correct me. Nobody criticize when you see the Schrodinger cat, right?
Oh, Schrodinger's cat. Yeah,
Yeah, Schrodinger cat. Nobody
yeah.
criticize that. I mean, that's used very often.
It's they even have conversations about the science in Marvel movies, right?
There is a
They'll
lot of science in Marvel, and
yeah,
I'm a fan of Marvel and DC.
yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
I just ain't
but
been
you
keeping up.
yeah, you have legitimate scientists who can make connections and parallels between scientific concepts to Marvel movies, but there's no criticism of it But
Fact,
then when you
facts.
when you make the connection to African art, now there's an argument. It's like, okay, now I see that there's a double standard here. So I don't understand
And
it.
not to
But
mention this, I don't know if you're a fan of anime, but there's a science in anime as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what STEAM is. STEAM is using art to teach science, technology, engineering, and math.
Period. Period. Okay. I had to put that out there. But yes, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what's my personal favorite videos of yours. Um, so I like the one that you did about science is religion and God is electron.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think you did a good job with that. Um, and also the one that you did about evolution.
Oh
I
yeah,
yeah.
that came from my last talk with you. I was like, because I was like, man, because when we were just talking, but it was so powerful because I was like, I really need to just dig into these concepts and like just do a full video about it, because you were asking some very good questions, and it was a deep topic. You know what I mean? And just to talk about how science evolved over time, what actually constitutes science. That was so yeah, that was coming from you. Again, I'm giving you your flowers. That was coming from
Oh,
you.
thank
They,
you.
I'm looking for you to start writing. I don't know if you want to write a book or not, but yeah,
Oh,
I'm looking for
oh
you
my
to.
God. You know what? I used to write, and I'm on the writer block. I've been on the writer
Mm,
block for a very long time, so I'm trying to break out of that. But yes, but I've been
you
on the
know,
writer block.
they say when you have a writer's block, the only way to get out of it is just start writing. Just start writing something. Whatever comes to your mind, just start writing.
Yes, I appreciate that all. But you did a great job with that video about evolution. I was like, oh, he did a great job.
Appreciate it.
And then there's another one you did, well, a few more, but this one I forgot. It's like some type of alchemist or something, alchemist of consciousness or something like that. It's like you
Oh,
was
that's
breaking
a
out like
yeah.
the different like people in the conscious community, like different
Hmm.
organizations, what they symbolize, what they mean, and stuff like that, like what the science and all that. I thought you did a phenomenal job with that.
Yeah, that's a old one. I'll tell you what motivated that. So this
Hmm.
was way back when oh man, they had a evolution conference. I think it was
Yeah,
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 this might have been like 2013ish,
yeah.
2014ish, something like that.
And
And
shout out to the sister my
yeah, and like it was like all these different people in the building. Like it would be the Hebrew Israelites, and then the RBGs, and then the Muslims, and it just and that everybody had on their different, I don't want to say costumes, but their different customary garb or whatever, and they were
yeah.
doing their roll calls, and I was like, "Man, this is taking me back to college when you would see like the different fraternities
Oh
in the club
yeah.
hopping, and I was like, okay, so this is this type of, and so if you know anything about personalities, they say okay, different fraternities are like a different personality type, different sororities are different personality types. So I was like, okay, so maybe these people are like this kind of personality, and it was just an observation I was making while I was people watching at that convention.
Oh, so you attended. Okay, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. So you might be familiar with some of the people. Yeah. So um are you familiar with Dr. Mott?
Yeah. Now I'm familiar. I feel like I'm familiar with a little bit of everybody. Yeah, I'm subscribed to Dr. Maat's channel.
Okay.
Yeah, and I saw like the stuff she was doing with her. I think she had like a STEAM camp this summer. So yeah, no, that's a powerful sister. And look, anybody out here who is trying to help and encourage and get our people into STEM, I'm all for it. Like hats off to
Oh
you.
yeah, yeah,
Salute.
she is. She
Yeah.
very powerful. I give her credit. I really do give her credit for that. Shout out to Sister My. She doing a great job. I mean, she teach at Morgan State University.
Hmm.
She's an electrical engineer herself.
Hmm.
Yeah, she's really big on STEM. So yeah, I give her the credit. Shout out to her. I give her flowers for doing that. Because
Yeah,
that's an inspiration for
that's right.
many people. You know what I'm saying? That's inspiration, especially for the sisters. That's inspiration for us to
For the
like really
sisters.
want to, get involved with something. I mean, you just see a sister like her just actually just constantly, bringing out videos and doing the interviews that she does. Yeah, I really like her. I really like what she do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, wow. But other than that, I thank you for coming on here, and hopefully I can get you back on here more often. Yes, so I have to come. Maybe we can come up with some more subjects to talk about, um, and just bring it on here. Maybe we could talk about anime since you an anime fan. I just got into anime, so
Yeah.
I'm learning more about it. At once upon a time, if you was to try to get me to watch it like 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't even be interested because I probably just thinking, oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's whack. It's
Mm-hmm.
boring. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm thinking that it was just a bunch of Japanese cartoon with people speaking in Japanese. But I yeah, but as a matter of fact, you know what? I did watch some animes. My favorite was not Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh.
Mm.
Yeah, those two were my favorites at that time.
What's the
Um,
one with is it so they say the last airbender isn't really anime. Have you ever
who?
heard that the last airbender? Is that really anime?
Airbender.
The
I
the
never heard that one. Nah.
Okay, okay. But
Uh,
that, yeah, if it is anime, then that's my favorite. But if it's not, then yeah, they're gonna probably pull my anime card at the convention.
oh, okay, yeah. But one of my favorite, well, few of my favorite anime is the one that I'm currently watching right now. It's called what is it called? It's called Hell Paradise. Yeah, that's the one that I'm watching. Hell Paradise, and there was another one called Black Lagoon,
Hmm.
and also Naruto.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah,
Naruto. Yeah, yeah, that's
yeah,
my nephew's
yeah, yeah,
favorite.
yeah, 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 yeah. I love Naruto, but I gotta go back and watch it because it's a very, very long series, and I didn't know it was super long. So I'm like, okay, I gotta make some time to actually watch it.
Yeah.
So I had to stop it for a minute because I'm on season 1, episode 22,
Oh
and
wow.
I just skipped on to start watching other animes. But I must say that it's pretty interesting. It's like it teaches you a life lesson and it's a lot of science behind it. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? So like once you watch anime, you start to like it's like you feel the connections, like you can relate to those characters in a sense.
Hmm.
And you can also just, what I'm saying, you can see the science and the ideas they use. So it's like you learn a lot from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I got the little app. I got the Crunchyroll app. Was it Crunchyroll app? That's the name of it. Crunchyroll. Yeah, I got the little anime app on there, so I'm like looking through, scrolling down, seeing which ones I want to watch. So right now I'm stuck on Hell's Paradise, and I'm gonna start watching Demon Slayer.
Oh, you're gonna be a expert. You know, like, they got what is it called? Dragon Con. They got Dragon Con coming up in Atlanta pretty soon. So
Yeah,
you could go down there. You'll be an expert.
yeah. You know what? I might need to start going to Dragon Con. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I might need to start. But also they used to have a lot of people don't know this. They also used to have a black science fiction
Oh no, I
festival
know.
too.
It's called Onyx Con. I went down. I used to go down there all the time. I don't even know. Do they still have Onyx Con? I haven't been again ever since COVID.
I don't know. I don't know. But also it's another name for it too. What's called Afrofuturism.
Afrofusion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, they used to have it. I don't know. They ain't had it since COVID, so I haven't heard much about it. But yeah, I went to a few of them, and I actually got a couple of books from various authors. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, are you still there?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still here. I was just trying to. Yeah, they still have Onyx Con. It's in
Okay.
September. Yeah. No, that's a powerful one. Um. Yeah. This
Yeah,
all this black nerd stuff.
yeah, 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 yeah. And then Facebook, they got their own little group called Blurred, which
Hmm.
is the black nerds that deals with
Yeah.
anime and all. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Yes, but yeah, I might give Dragon Con a chance. I might.
Look, I would say go down to Onyx Con first before you go to Dragon Con. Support our people first. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think, like I said, I think I've been to UnsCon, but I just don't remember what it was. I knew it was like they deal with science fiction novels and different authors was there or whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know that, but I don't. Yeah, I don't. I don't know when they're gonna have the next one. Hopefully.
Have
So
you ever heard of? I was trying to get ready to go, but now you done got me my in my black nerd space. Have you ever heard of steampunk? I know you heard of steampunk, but have you heard of steampunk?
steampunk.
Yeah.
Steam,
So
punk.
brother Balagoon and his partner they came up with steampunk, which is basically like
Wait a minute, is
black.
that the same one that wrote a book called Brother Man or something?
No, no, not brother man, not brother man. I got brother man. I got his books too. But
Yeah,
no, this
yeah,
is
yeah.
another guy called Balagoon. But he's in the Atlanta area. Um, yeah, I might if I don't know. I might try to put y'all in connection with each other. But yeah, he does what's called steampunk, which is black steampunk series. So yeah, that's another good one.
Okay. Yeah, the sister done dropped different animes down. She put Crying Freeman. Um, that's supposed to be an old anime. Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
Yeah, she done and this one is Guyver. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. But anyways, I don't want to hold you up because we'll be up in here talking about anime, Marvel,
I know.
DC comic books, and all of that. Yeah, I have to bring you back on so we can have those conversations
Oh
and
yeah.
break down the knowledge and break down the science behind those. You know what
Yeah,
I
that'll
mean?
be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that definitely would be fun to have you on here. But all right then, brother, you take it easy. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a productive day.
Thank you for having me back on. Have a great day too.
Okay, then peace.
All right, peace.
All right, peace. All right, y'all. Thank you guys for tuning in, watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I see that y'all really enjoyed the presentation. I see the people over here commenting, especially Sister Juju. Shout out to Sister Juju. I thank you for coming on here. Let me see who else came through. Let me see who else. Uh, what's it? Production by Incarnate. Shout out to Production by Incarnate. Let me see. Shout out to Ola Kidola. And also shout out to Born Internal Lord Allah. Thank y'all for coming through. Thank you so much. Yes. That I really appreciate that, brother. I think he does a good job. So y'all make sure y'all really check out his channel. It's called African Creation Energy channel. He drops it. I know he drops his part like every 2 weeks or once a month or something. So he's a very busy man. But if y'all get a chance to check out his channel, he has a lot of great information on there. I mean, phenomenal information. Y'all will love his channel. Uh, and also, like I said, y'all check out his books. I'm gonna post up the books again. You know, if you have it, cool. If you don't have it, I would encourage you all to check it out and support him. Okay, Patal Technology, 9 Ether Re-Engineering. Yes, y'all gotta support this brother. I mean, this brother is absolutely phenomenal. All right, but if you want to subscribe to my channel and support my channel, please do so. I have a birthday coming up, so my birthday is on the same day as Fred Hampton. Yeah, so me and Fred Hampton both share the same birthday. Yeah, very, very interesting. And also I have the same birthday as the late Robin Harris, the comedian as well. So we all got the same birthdays. So yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, share my channel, and also check out the previous videos that I have done. If you get a chance to. And that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. So yeah, this is why science is very important. And again, just like the brother broke it down to y'all, our people was always very knowledgeable, and they always contribute to what we call the STEM. All right, they had scientific knowledge before they even got here to this land. They had the knowledge. So please make sure you guys check out the information that I was given to him as well. Check out Stefan Alexander, who is um, theoretical physicist. Also, Melvin A. Felton Jr., who's another physicist. Check out Neil deGrasse Tyson and Sylvester Gates. Yeah, just a few lists of individuals that you guys check out. And also check out Sister Fatima Jackson, who's a bioanthropologist. She does a good job breaking down the biology, the genetics, and whatnot. So please make sure you guys check her out. Um, until then, y'all take it easy. Y'all be safe. Y'all have a good Saturday. And peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany. I'm out. And we will reconnect later. All right. Peace.